I obviously see it changing lives. It removes the noise, but doesn't change their lifestyle habit. I have mixed emotions.
Was there a moment in time that you went, I don't want to do this anymore, I want to do that?
I realized that family medicine was about insurance. Insurance dictated the way you practiced, and the way you practiced was dictated about time. I mean, how can you prescribe a medicine when you talk to someone for 5 minutes or 7 minutes? You know, when I first see people, the first thing I talk to them is about lifestyle, sleep, diet, and exercise. Those are the three things that is medicine when you put all three of them in practice at the same time. And that means understanding them and actually putting some guidelines behind how you can maximize those three lifestyle characteristics. And if you do, guess what? Life gets better.
Hello, and welcome to Keep Shining with Stuart MacMillan. My special guest today is Dr. Brent Agin. He is a functional medicine physician and the founder and medical director of Priority UMD here in Clearwater, Florida. He's recognized for healthy aging, lifestyle medicine, hormone optimization, and nutrition. And he founded TeleWellness MD, which is a wellness-based telehealth company. His stated aim is simple and yet extremely ambitious. He wants to get every patient to say that they feel the best, both mentally and physical, than they have in a very long time. And he wants to do that by building sustainable preventative habits. Please help me welcome Dr. Brent Agin.
Keep shining, be a light. You were made to be a lighthouse, shine bright. Keep shining, be a light.
Welcome to Keep Shining. As I said, our guest today is Dr. Brent Agin, and we're going to jump into some conversation. Brent and I have known each other for, hard to believe, probably almost 20 years, so crazy. And he's become a great wise counsel, and a good friend. So you went to school at Michigan State. You're from Michigan, is that right?
Correct.
And you were involved in sports there. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So my whole life was based on sports, pretty much. You know, my father was an engineer at Dow Chemical, so got exposed to science at an early age, and I love math and science. That was I love science. Science is great, and so as I got into college, being an athlete, my major was political science. I was trying to find an easier path in academics just to allow me to to survive, and so I came to this crossroad where I was like, well, what am I going to do with, I love science, but I love people. I tried working at Dow Chemical and running tests on acids and bases over resins, and didn't see anybody in a whole day. And I was like, all right, this is not my thing. And so one of my friends that was a year older than me had already started down the path of pre-med, and he told me, well, hey, it covers science. You get to talk to people. You have flexibility. You're always going to be in need. Why don't you try medicine? And so I was like, all right, I guess I'll give it a try.
That's great.
That was about it.
Wow, you gave it a try. That's for sure. It's funny you say that because, in fact, you were primarily a soccer player. Lots of sports, but primarily soccer. Is that right? Like that was your go-to.
Basketball was probably my favorite sport. It just, 6 foot tall. It was a little bit easier to be a soccer player. So I loved them both, but
yeah. Well, 5'8", in heels, basketball wasn't in my genes at all. But it's funny when you said the thing about political science. I actually started at McGill in political science because I wanted to do something that was relatively easy and I could play hockey 5 or 6 times a week.
Exactly.
So it's kind of similar. So you got into this practice, came down to Florida. But there's been a transition even since I've known you, going from sick care, being a doctor for sick care, and getting away from sort of that traditional doctor physician thing and getting more into lifestyle medicine, prevention, that kind of thing. Was there a moment in time that you went, I don't want to do this anymore, I want to do that?
Yeah, it was, and luckily it was so early in my career that it was, completely changed my path. And so this was in my first year of residency. Went into family medicine, just excited to make a difference and impact people's lives. But when you enter into residency, you immediately see That's not the fact. It was within the first 6 months of my first year of residency that I realized that family medicine was about insurance. Insurance dictated the way you practiced, and the way you practiced was dictated about time and how you could maximize the number. I mean, they were preparing you in the first year for how fast you had to see patients. This is how long you had. If people had 6 things they wanted to talk about, you had the time to discuss one, how to balance that conversation, get out of the room, make your note, prescribe any medicines. I mean, how can you prescribe a medicine when you talk to someone for 5 minutes or 7 minutes? I mean, the average
Crazy.
time to speak to someone. So it was pretty easy for me. I knew that I went into medicine to make an impact and be able to have time to learn people, understand people, and help people. And so after 6 months, I was already looking at my exit strategy. I started thinking about concierge medicine, VIP medicine, thinking in my mind, people would definitely want to spend money to have more time with a doctor. But, back in 1999, that was not the case. It was wishful thinking.
Hmm. Interesting. In the early days, you had the clinic and you started Trim Nutrition. What were you trying to solve then that you didn't see other physicians or the medical practice doing? What were you trying to do that they weren't doing?
Well, most importantly was time. It just, that was that was the number one thing people talk about early in a concierge or a different model is, oh my gosh, no doctor's ever talked to me this long. And that was the easy part, was just, you just need time. And that's why, you look today and there's much more, telehealth has exploded because you can actually find a doctor talk to you longer on the phone than you do actually having someone when you're in the clinic. And you can discover a whole lot just on listening to somebody, a lot more than only giving them a couple minutes and then trying to dictate the flow of the consultation. So
Interesting. So you've transitioned now to Priority UMD. I've been to your clinic a number of times. Tell us a little bit about what that transition was and how you got to sort of where you are today.
yeah, just evolving and understanding the needs. And then also, obviously, you have to understand the landscape of the business component of medicine. And when you have the percentage of people that actually look for medicine outside of insurance is very small. And so,
Hmm.
when you have to
Hmm.
pay the bills, you have to start being strategic in how you set up a clinic that people aren't used to paying for. They're used to insurance covering everything. So you have to provide some sort of a value, perceived value for someone to come in and say, I'm gonna spend money to talk to you. And so, as you know, the best way to get that to even build that is to get new clients that really like you, know there's a value, and then tell someone else saying, hey, you should go talk to this guy. So it's a process. When word of mouth is your best advertising, it takes time to build a team and
Yeah.
a community that supports you.
Well, I will say, Deb and I have, because of Hurricane Helene, we've been up in Maine for almost over a year now. Headed back to Florida in October. I can't wait to get back into my weekly routine of coming to the clinic and getting IV. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But you've created an environment where it's very welcoming, it's bright, and just people want to be there and they want to be better, right? They're not going there because they're sick. They're going there because they want to be better. And actually, Brent, I mean, that's really the whole idea behind the Lighthouse Collective and the Keep Shining and what we're doing. We want to create people that are better versions of themselves. Whether that's physically, mentally, spiritually, whatever, just to maximize who they are. But I always use the two words "so that" because I think if you want to be a better version of yourself, so you can brag about it, or show off your body, show off how much you know, show off your wealth. If you're doing it for that reason, that's narcissistic. I want people to be better versions of themselves so that they can share that with others. And I can say, with the 20 years that you and I have got to know each other, that is absolutely your aim.
Yeah.
You want to share what you know, you want to share knowledge, you want to share experiences. So that's really really cool. Um, let's jump into like what you do on a regular basis. What are the first three behaviors you address in nearly every new patient? What
Every
things do you see?
every one of them, it's all lifestyle. It's functional. That's one of the confusions is like, what type of medicine do you practice now? And it's like, it's so confusing. Even the message about this type of medicine is even confusing because it could be functional medicine, integrative, wellness, age management, anti-aging, non-traditional. Even they can go as far as homeopathic and naturopathic, but it functional is really what it is. It's medicine that helps improve your function in whatever aspect of life. And so that's the first thing. Is it? So I practice functional medicine, which is trying to get people, like you said, mentally and physically to be functional and improve function in every aspect of life. And so, when I first see people, the first thing I talk to them is about lifestyle and sleep, diet, and exercise. Those are the three things that is medicine. And, from going back to
let's repeat those: sleep, diet, exercise, right? That it's as simple as that.
Yeah, as simple as that. That is the framework that if everyone had those three things. And that's what I tell people is like my goal for my first visit with someone is saying, let's at least establish something tangible that you can do that at least so if you do these three things and you make these changes, you get this result. So then you at least know if you do these three things, this is the result you get. So whether you go back and do that for the rest of your life, at least that is the result you get when you put all three of them in practice at the same time. And that means understanding them and actually putting some guidelines behind how you can maximize those three lifestyle characteristics. And if you do, guess what? Life gets better mentally and physically.
It's true. How do you measure change though? Because in almost everything in life, if we see a result, then it drives us to continue, right? Like a little bit of this and you go, oh shoot, this is working. I want to keep going. How do you measure results in like 30, 90, 365 days, like a year? What is there something tangible that your patients see in short periods of time?
Yeah. I'm not so set on lab data. Objective data is great, but subjectively, I set targets because the first thing that everybody wants to be healthy and happy. That's their goal. And if you have those two things, life is good. So the first thing to start about is if you're in there, what's upsetting you? What are you not getting? What are you trying to achieve? So my first 30 days is just to get people motivated and happy. Some change, a little win. All they got to do is be happy. That's the start of it. The end goal of all this is happiness. It's rare that you find a really happy person if they're not healthy. They can fake it, but happiness is the end goal of all of this. And so, that's my first 30-day goal is be happy, start to be happy with change.
It's funny because, having been to you as a physician, it's usually your first question. How are you feeling? As opposed to another doctor who right away wants to, sit up on the table and put their stethoscope on and start listening to you. Your first question is always how you feeling, what's happening in your life. I think that's amazing. So,
and what are the goals? What's lacking in your current situation that you want to improve on?
Mm-hmm. So we've talked a little bit. One of the things that you specialize in is hormone optimization. What tells you as a physician it's time to test, or as a potential patient, and what principles guide kind of a safe, evidence-based plan?
Well, you part of it's assumption. We age, and we know that age creates hormone decline. Some people are going to decline faster than others. And so there's also a difference in between hormone optimization and hormone replacement. We know not everybody needs hormone replacement at the same age, but a lot of people could use hormone optimization. Almost everybody could optimize hormones. So hormones are starting to decline. By optimizing it just means bring them back up into physiological levels and just keep them from declining, which we know causes aging. So everybody could use this. So, it starts with getting people to understand, data is good. So if we knew what your labs look like and your average hormone levels and inflammatory markers and what they were in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s, it's a lot easier to look in your 50s and 60s and see where you've gone to. But it's pretty safe to say that when people are getting into their 40s and 50s, that's when you start looking at hormones. But there are people that if you have lifestyle in place, I have guys in their 70s that have always been healthy and they don't need anything. They're not on medicines. They might, I mean, when I say don't need anything, they're usually so healthy that optimizing is their goal. So it's just, they they don't need replacement. They just need optimization. They feel good, but they could feel better. And they're
Yeah.
also looking to not deal with the decline. So
Right.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. Um, when we were living in Florida, Deb and I would almost every Friday come into the clinic, had IV therapy. I'd love to hear about IV and nutrient therapy, and how do you do it? IVs like NAD. How do we do that responsibly? And is there any way of tracking uh, whether it's working apart from just feeling better?
Well, micronutrients are ubiquitous. Micronutrient deficiencies. It's one of my number one, um, factors. Just because most people understand our food issue in the United States. But when you look at the
Mostly
amounts
mostly processed food, right?
yeah, exactly. So we're not getting anywhere near the nutritional value that we need in our daily diet. So micronutrients is a big focus of mine. So I I don't get too aggressive into doing micronutrient testing. You can do it, but our traditional labs don't do it. They'll test for some nutrients, and you can get some labs tested to test other nutrients, but they're not going to pay for them. Your insurance isn't going to cover them. So there's some boutique labs that will do, micronutrient testing, and it takes 4 weeks to get back. Not cheap. So it's not even an assumption. It's known that the population has micronutrient deficiencies. I start there and just say, okay, well, where is this client at? Is this client one of
Mhm.
those people that is very healthy, doesn't have many complaints, coming in just to do a routine check, see if there's anything that they could do better, taking a look at their labs? Um, I'll approach them with just a standard approach to nutrient supplementation, and a lot of that could end up just being oral.
Yeah.
But as soon as you start getting into symptoms or disease, that's where I start looking at, hey, you need 100% absorption, you need 98% absorption, you need to get nutrients into yourself quickly so we can start improving on the symptoms and start looking at seeing if we can't get you off of whether it's medications, improving quality of life. And so, but then on the other side, when there's micronutrient deficiencies, you could also justify getting micronutrients through an IV, periodically, but continuously as you age. I have patients that have done an IV every week, almost every week. Some of them for 8 years, 9 years.
Wow. Wow.
And and one of some of them are ones that did end up having some sort of a medical condition, like a smoldering leukemia or autoimmune disease. These people are in remission, and so they don't change what's working. So they just keep doing what they're doing, and their doctors keep saying, "Hey, keep doing what you're doing. Everything looks great. Hey, you're
That's great.
defying medicine here. Keep doing it."
That's great. That's
Yeah.
really cool. I will say, for the 2 or 3 years that we were doing that, I never felt better. Like I don't know if it was just partly just confidence that you're taking care of yourself, and
Yeah.
you walk a little bit differently. There's a big trend right now on GLP-1s. I just read actually last week, I think Ozempic got themselves in a little bit of trouble. There's a class action lawsuit, but this is the trend right now, and I wanted to hear what you thought of that. And do you prescribe it? Like, what do you think? What do you think the trend is doing to health in general? And what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I have mixed emotions, because
Okay,
I
that's
obviously
fair.
see, yeah,
Yeah.
I obviously see it changing lives, because we have an obesity problem, and we also have a societal acceptance of obesity, which is allowing people more comfort in being overweight and obese. And so you have a large percentage of the population that doesn't want to be overweight, but they're stuck. They can't get out of it. They don't have the discipline. They can't stop the chatter of the food. They are there. And then you add those people because most people that are overweight have some symptoms, have some, it's tied to disease all day, and it is a disease in itself. So for it to be able to reduce fat tissue, therefore reducing inflammation and all sorts of other hormonal imbalances, you can see how quickly someone would be like, oh my gosh, this is changing my life. And it does. It changes people's lives. But you can, a large percentage of the population also make that their crutch. The same. So you have two ways to get from point A to point B. You can go the long route, which most people can't ever get to because they lack the discipline. They can't put those lifestyle components all together at one time.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to work out, but they haven't changed their diet. Their sleep stinks. Their hormones are off. There's work to be involved to get there. Well, Ozempic just kind of shortens that path for people, but unless they're going to stay on that medicine their whole lives, they still have to learn how to eat, how to exercise, improve their sleep, balance their hormones, correct their micronutrients. And in a lot of cases, the people on Ozempic are, because the nature of the drug, they have a too low caloric intake. They don't understand food. It removes the noise, but doesn't change their lifestyle habits. And so you have this problem where some people are losing too much weight too fast. Some are on it now and just never going to get off because they're just, this is their way of just stopping the stomach, just stopping all the ways of gaining weight. And then you have the others that do it the way I think is correct, which is do it, get the weight off the whole time you're using this drug. You're also making lifestyle changes, and you eventually get to a microdose, or you start with a microdose, which is just enough to get you some momentum. And then once the momentum's once you get over the hump and your hormones are working and your lifestyle is in place, you taper off the drug, and that's a successful use. Now, the other part of this is that there are a lot of diseases that are tied to obesity or inflammation and insulin resistance. This is a diabetic drug, so it fixes the insulin resistance. It reduces the inflammation. It actually has anti-inflammatory components to the drug. So now you're getting people with autoimmune diseases and other conditions, depression, anxiety, all sorts of these conditions that are tied to obesity. These are getting better. So now their autoimmune's getting better. Their numbers are getting better. Their inflammatory markers are going down. They're happier. They're more confident. So this drug you can see how it can grab people and they're like, holy crap, I haven't felt this good my whole life. I'm never getting off of this. But remember, pharmaceuticals were never made to be on forever. We weren't made to need pharmaceuticals. So that's the,
there's
that's
also a worry. I think, I mean, we don't know what the long-term effects of staying on it for an extended period of time are, right? So
that's correct.
There's a potential danger there too. Interesting. Very interesting. And I think, I've appreciated your encouragement always that lifestyle is still key. Just eat nutrition, fitness,
sleep, diet, and exercise.
Yeah.
And then you also throw hormones and micronutrients on there. I mean, nutritional supplementation is a requirement. It's not an option. So, but the sleep, diet, and exercise are definitely the big ones.
I want to jump into, your some of these advanced modalities that you've kind of looked at. How do you evaluate some of the emerging tools, things like ketamine therapy, PRP? Like, how do you, as a physician, a guy who's got Priority MD as their clinic, how do you evaluate those and decide whether to put them into your practice or even some of the stuff you may take out?
Results. I spent a lot of time researching. That's my job. I love science. And so you see so much in medicine, and especially with the rise of biohacking. Biohacking to me is like functional medicine, but it's very driven by these various innovations, which you have to buy, red light therapy, sauna therapy, cold plunges, all of them sound great and everything, but you have to buy them and use them. And again, it's like trying to speed up what you can get out of good lifestyle. But so I do this. I do the science first. I look at all the science, and then I try everything myself. I've tried pretty much everything that I could try on myself. I do myself first, and then once I feel that it's something that I feel has potential, it's getting results. If I bring it into the clinic, then I spend time watching it for the people that are interested in it, and making sure the results are sustainable. I talk to all my patients when they come in, and I ask them what they've done, what they've been doing, what's been successful. And if someone brings up something that I've been looking at and they're like, oh yeah, I had a great experience with hyperbaric oxygen, I'd be like, really? Tell me more. And I learn from patients to get their experiences. And then as I get enough data, that's when I bring it in. And there's been plenty of times like PRP. I thought the science was great. Administered PRP for several years, and then it just slowly fizzled out because the cost to the client wasn't justified based on the results I was getting. Now you
Okay.
add stem cells with PRP, and now you have a very powerful tool. But PRP by itself, that's a great example of how I did it for a couple years, knees, hair,
Yeah.
joint injections. And then slowly phased it out just because I couldn't justify charging someone or, tell them about using it, without feeling a little odd. So
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things I like about you. You're not gonna try to sell somebody something you don't actually believe in. So that's pretty cool. Um, you mentioned cold plunge and everybody, I mean, it seems like it's like everybody's doing it. And I know I've had a conversation with you about it. I mean, I live 50 paces from the Atlantic Ocean in Maine, and if I want a cold plunge, I just walk 50 paces. But
jump in.
um but you've talked about whether or not, people are overdoing it. Maybe it's more of a fad than actually good. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, that's again into the biohacking space. I think biohacking is amazing because there are so many people studying the science of longevity, which is what I do. And
Hmm.
but the problem is that a lot of these therapies, like cold plunging, for example, it's all based off of your cortisol. It's based on a kind of a shock therapy, which gets your system into this fight or flight, which causes all these healthy benefits. Well, there's no long-term studies on someone doing all of these because you also you see these claims about some of these biohacking companies, and a lot of them talk about these people becoming superhuman or becoming the best version of yourself. And so I ask these companies like, well, hey, you should here's a great example. Do you remember P90X?
Yep. Yep.
So when P90X came out, Tony Horton, back in the day, he was ahead of everyone because he had every single person that did P90X was sending in a video showing them from day one and then 90 days later. And you couldn't deny the results. But so when you look at some of these biohacking techniques like cold plunge, I'm like, okay, well, show me the board of all these people from in 90 days of doing cold plunge. Show me their biomarkers or show me how much fat they've lost or how much muscles they've gained or how youthful they look or, cognitive scores. Something, show me something that's showing me how these people are becoming superhuman. But I'd go to these conventions over and over and over, and I wasn't seeing all these healthy people walking around talking about how cold plunges changed their lives.
Right.
So it just made me wonder, is this just monetizing medicine and just say, hey, you buy these and the science is there, but there's no long-term data. And then you also have to wonder, we're already in a stress overload. Our sympathetic nervous system is
That's a good
always on
point.
fire. So now we're jumping in and shocking our systems more. Are we actually creating more stress than our body can manage? And that's the unknown. And no one
That's a
really
great point.
talks about that.
It's a great point. I think, sometimes a lot of this stuff is for, I hate to say it, but for show. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In an age
Yeah.
of social media, and I want to show everybody, I do this 5 times a week or whatever, and with no real data that would support that it's actually good for you. I don't know if it's bad for you, but it's still a lot of work, right? So, and I know, there are companies now creating these cold plunge facilities. Or ones you can like have built into your house, like a hot tub. Some guy tried to sell me one of those the other day. And I just said, well, I live 50 paces from the Atlantic Ocean. So
You know what a great comparison is they put water in bottles and we buy it when water's everywhere. But it's like the cold plunges, like you said, you could go jump in the Atlantic Ocean, which has an ecosystem that actually is grounding and is supposed to have all these health benefits.
well, and salt
So
water and
exactly,
all that.
yeah. So I mean, so again, we have these resources that we know work. Sunlight, oceans, and things like that we don't have to spend money on. But
Now that's
so
a
again,
new
I think
thing.
it
That's a
goes
new
back to
thing I
basics.
just heard. It's new that I heard it on a podcast, but I think you've been talking about it for a long time, even with respect to sunscreen and stuff. It's not in my notes, but I thought about it. Deb and I have been reading about, every morning getting a certain amount of sunlight every morning is so important. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Oh, it's essential. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so known. And when you start really looking at sun, we're the only civilization that didn't worship the sun. You know, where every other civilization worshiped the sun, and here we are. You know, the stats on that is interesting. Is that right now about the average adult spends 8% of their life outside, and they're predicting in the next 10 to 15 years or 20 years that could go down to 3%. And so we know it's, you know, you look at medical books back in the early 1900s, and they would put people in the hospital, wheel them all up, go up to the top floor, and they just put them all out in the sun on the top floor, and there was their medicine because they didn't have
Right.
medicine. And
Right.
so, you know, the sunlight's supposed to also affect our optic chiasm, which sends the signals to our nervous system. And that's the whole theory on sunscreen. You look at that Kelly Slater, who is one of the most famous surfers, never used sunscreen in his whole life, and he was on a podcast talking about the sun and saying that if you get up in the morning and the sun and you let the sun get into your eyes, it tells your melanocytes to protect themselves, and it keeps you from burning. And so this is a guy that never wore sunscreen his whole life and was out in the sun all day from sun up to sundown, and talking about what, you know, the whole industry of sunscreens and how that is just causing illness because our bodies, our eyes, everything needs sunlight.
It's interesting. Everything in moderation, right? Everything in
Yes.
moderation.
Yeah.
And it seems like we overcorrect way too much, right? Like we go, oh,
Yeah.
this is bad. So it's totally bad. It's not,
Yep.
we need to moderate. I think it was the American Heart Association, speaking of good and bad, I think it was them that just, weighed in on intermittent fasting,
Oh yeah,
and
I saw that.
you've had some conversations. I know that you have, really been a strong proponent of that with Deb and me. So maybe, tell me what were they thinking, and why would they say that, and what are your thoughts?
I have no idea why they would say that, but you also remember that the media also comes out and says that saturated fats are bad for you, and then they're good for you, then they're bad for you. You know, so I have no idea why they made that statement, but they've also made, well, you know, we could talk about the World Health Initiative that came out in 2002 that they just redacted, that basically took 2 decades of women from being able to use hormones, which could have changed their whole health paths. So this is the same thing. I mean, there is so much research that supports fasting of any intermittent fasting, periodic fasting, several day fast, 36, 72 hour fastings, and what it does to autophagy, which is our body's ability to get rid of bad cells and turnover cells that are supposed to turn over. There's so much data on fasting and NAD production, which, you know, you were just talking about cellular production of our own innate energy sources. So the fasting is there, but this to me is just like telling people not to wear sunscreen. Vitamin D is essential for our bodies, for our health. It's a prohormone. It's essential for our immune system. So someone's telling us that, you look at the food pyramid upside down.
Yeah.
Someone is giving us bad data, and it just seems that data is data that would keep us not healthy and not promoting our own innate immune response. And so by saying don't fast, don't eat healthy saturated fats, don't let sun get on your body, they all fit into the same narrative, which is they're not looking to allow us to be healthy because our society runs on disease.
Interesting. Interesting. It's funny because I'm a guy has studied the Bible and stuff, and there's a lot of stuff in the Bible that is called spiritual, but if you actually examine it, it's great health stuff. So and fasting is one of them. I mean, fasting is a
Yeah.
fundamental spiritual value in the particularly in the Old Testament. I mean, there's other things around just what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat in the Old Testament that if you looked at them, they treated them like, oh, these are God's spiritual laws. But if you looked at them, they're actually good medicine,
Yeah, right.
good health
Yep.
practices. Is kind of neat. So intermittent fasting is good. Um, let's talk about discipline. So I know you're a disciplined individual. I just actually did a podcast with a in Tampa. I'll get you introduced to her. She is a nutrition coach and fitness person. Great individual, and she was talking about the fact that planning is everything. So whether you talked about the three things, all your sleep, you got to plan it. And I've started to do that. I've had a conversation with you about that. I've just gone, you know what? I don't care what happens. I'm gonna get 6 to 8 hours sleep. And and planning your fitness regime, and saying, I'm just going to do this, and putting it actually in your agenda, right? Like in your schedule, in your calendar, workout, right? And then I was mentioning my daughter, Bethany, who, if you go to her house, her meals are planned for the entire week. So if you go on the side of her fridge, including snacks, so it is breakfast, lunch, snack, dinner, 7 days out, and that helps her be healthier, right? Because it's all planned out.
Absolutely.
I want to hear about yours because you're a disciplined dude. What is your sleep, movement, nutrition, stress management? What does your week look like?
Yeah, it's very similar. I mean, probably the biggest thing that's evolved with me is the spirituality part of it. I've never had a problem with spirituality, but it's dedicated time to it, because spirituality really ties into self care and mindfulness. And so my routine's always been the same. I've been an athlete, and I also understand. Here's a great way to look at this. Like my parents, my dad's 84, my mom's 80, and they have a list, and they take their medicines, and they take those medicines right on the same time. They never miss them. They're organized. They're in containers, and then they're not. I mean, and supplements too. But they're organized in that. But the average person just fails to be able to discipline and organize themselves when it comes to lifestyle, because it takes a little bit more effort. This is actually work. You have to do these things. So if people understood that sleep, diet, and exercise was their medicine, you need to take that just like your pills. You can't miss it. If you miss it, your blood pressure might go up. If you miss it, your blood sugars might go up. And there's a consequence to that they know because of fear that's installed from the healthcare system and media. So that's where we're lacking. If the same focus was on functional medicine, and the doctors are saying you cannot miss your exercise 3 days a week, is all I'm asking. Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 8 a.m. You better be at your class, because if you don't do that exercise, you're going to get this end result. Your blood pressure is going to go up. Your depression is going to come back. Your anxiety, So, I agree. I mean, my regimen is trying to stick with what works. And I prepackage meals. I meal prep on Sundays, and so it's no different. And then at nighttime, again, and lifestyle is a constant tweaking to see what gives you your best vitality.
Mhm.
But so my nighttime routine and my morning routines are probably the two most important things, because you have to set the tone for your day, and you have to set the tone for your sleep. So here, you cannot expect to have good quality sleep if you're on a screen right up until the time you go to bed. And so a routine would be is like what you're trying to do is make lifestyle your medicine. So if that is your medicine and you're on no pharmaceuticals and you're trying to keep that vitality and the energy and your confidence, everything about your life that you have that's working, and want to preserve it, you have to get into that groove. And it's moderation, like you said. I mean, I'm probably 80%, 90% stuck to this routine, which gives me 10 to 20% of flexibility where I might not make something, I might not do something. But if you can hit that 80, 20, 90, 10 rule, or live by moderation, you're going to do just fine.
That's great. That's really good. Um, Labs and baselines. I know that you don't lean as much into labs, more into how people feel. But I also know, having had you as a physician for a number of years, that you do watch carefully, and thankfully you do actually. But which objective markers do you rely on most, to get early wins and ongoing accountability?
Um, Hormones is a big one when you're in
Okay.
that age group, especially
Okay.
because, again, remember, if someone comes in, they're usually coming in. I do have people that just come in yearly because they're just making sure that everything's okay and on to the next year. But most of the time, people are coming in because they have complaints. So that does usually result in, let's get some lab work and let's get some subjective data from you and see if we can figure it out. But hormones are a big one. Obviously, the routine labs that every physician checks, you got to look at your red and white blood cells, your kidney and liver function. But hormones, inflammatory markers, anything that can support what the person's complaints are. And again, like I said, if you can get someone, so look at other countries that don't have have the healthcare system we have. we're not, they're the ones producing the centurions, they're the ones that have these healthy people. They're not checking labs. They're not doing prostate biopsies. They're not doing stress tests all the time. And so a lot less of the medicine is delivered in these countries, but yet they're healthy. And so I don't, you can learn a lot from your interview, and you can learn a lot what people's symptoms are to understand what they need. The lab data is just supportive, so you can track that things are actually getting better. But if you came in and we got no lab data, but if you say you had 30 pounds to lose, your sleep was not good, and you couldn't run for over a mile, and then in 90 days you were running 4 miles, you were sleeping 7 to 8 hours, and you lost your 20 or 30 pounds, guess what? We would check your lab data and go, hey, everything looks great. So that lab data before that didn't look great, it still ended up with the same results. So
yeah, I always say you can't manage what you don't measure. So sometimes just as a measurement, right, to go, hey, we're actually trending in the right way. So
yeah,
which is
but
great.
Again, you could also use your subjective questionnaire.
How do you feel?
As your data as well. Yeah, how do you feel? Yeah. How's your sleep? How's your sex life? Have you put on more lean muscle mass? Has your energy gone up? Are you sleeping better? Yeah, so.
It's funny, you just mentioned lean muscle mass, and while we've already passed this topic, I know that with GLP-1s like Ozempic and tirzepatide, there is a challenge in terms of losing muscle mass at the same time as you're losing weight. Do you if people are on that, do you recommend anything in particular?
Oh yeah, we've had several gyms that do body composition analysis and had people coming in on GLP-1s, and they would lose 30 pounds and 20% of it would be, or sorry, 50 to 70% of it was lean muscle mass.
Yikes.
Because
that's
remember,
terrible, right?
It interrupts the messaging from the two brains, your enteric, your gastrointestinal system, and your central nervous system. They're two brains, and they communicate. So it impairs that communication. It slows down the way food moves in your stomach, and it takes your appetite away. Those three things, if you go into a caloric deficit and people are still trying to exercise, it becomes a stressor, and you start cannibalize your muscles. I mean, you're going to get the energy from somewhere. And so lean muscle loss is a very common problem with GLP-1s. And that's what I'm saying. If you're going to get put on a GLP-1, you have to use that, but you have to get an eating strategy. You have to calculate your macros so you know your
workout strategy. Yeah.
Oh yeah, everything.
That's cool. So how much sleep do you typically get in an evening, in a night?
About 6.5. But I've tried to get 8. I've worked on sleep pretty much my whole life. I've never been a sleeper, and I'm one of those guys that just don't get tired. And so, but I try. I get between 6 and 7. Okay. But I shoot for an 8-hour window. But most of the time, I'm getting up an hour early on my own, and I feel great. So it's a tough one, but I'm not going to take a pharmaceutical to knock myself out. I instead, but you also have to think is that we're also stuck to a timetable that has been set for us. People have to get up and go to work at 8.
Not the sun up, sun down thing that we used to have. Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly. And then the whole idea of night owls, I mean, people that stay up late should have the opportunity to start work late. But, for me, my company, everyone starts at 8 o'clock. So it doesn't matter if I want to stay up till 1 o'clock and then sleep until 8 and then get to work at 9. It just doesn't work that way.
Okay. Getting back to the subjective, you're really into lifestyle. You really help people to kind of change the way they live. How do you help patients stick to habits? Like they're trying to create new habits sometimes. Do you have, like, from a mind perspective, or is there any coaching that you do to help them stick to habits without burnout?
It's motivation. A lot of what I do is motivation, because you need a certain amount of time, especially for weight loss. You look at the average dieter sticks to a diet. It ends up almost being just before 3 months. And most people need 3 to 6 months for where their leptin and ghrelin and their cortisol, their insulin, everything. The body takes a long time. It takes a long time to gain weight and to cause your hormones to just be like going to leptin resistance. Leptin's what tells you you're full. And when your hormones are not working, it takes 3 to 6 months to get them to start working again. And most people can't make it that long. That's why GLP-1s are so powerful.
I see.
They're allowing people to get over that hump. So if people used a GLP-1, manage their macronutrients right so that their hormones were actually starting to get used to a plan. So they're taking away the noise, they're cutting out their appetite, but they're getting the right amount of nutrition. Over time, your hormones are going to work. You're not going to crave sugars. You're going to be in a balanced nutrition state at that point, which works. But that's the biggest thing is discipline. How can I get someone to stick to something? And with lifestyle, like I said before, you can't just do diet without exercise and sleep. You can't do sleep without diet and exercise. So you need all of the components, and you need that person to do it for 3 to 6 months. And if they can do that, you usually have someone that has reached the point where they're never going to go back. Most people don't get there.
Interesting, because I use this line: if the promise is clear, the price is easy. And outside of health, in my business life, I always ask people where they want to be in a year, for example, and then we map out how they get there. And I keep reminding them of where they want to be. Do you know what I mean? And that's
Here's your goal.
Yeah, like, didn't you say you wanted to do this? Because if you did, you gotta do this. Do you believe there's a single change in the past 5 years that most improved patient outcomes? Is there anything that's in the last 5 years that's really jumped out at you?
In the last 5 years, you probably know what I'm going to say, but it's definitely mindful medicine. It's the new rise of psychedelic medicine, and it's because Bernard Shaw said if change is impossible without changing your mind, or
Right.
if you're looking
Right.
if you're looking to change anything, it's impossible without changing your mind. And I did my own observational studies, and so in my 23 years of practice in medicine, I've seen probably 3 therapies I think that are can change someone's health path very strongly by itself, and that's stem cells, growth hormone, and psychedelics. All of them have the ability to impact someone's health enough that can single-handedly maybe push them to that point or support them enough to where they could get to that place where they want to be.
Wow.
Without other factors in place, but mostly not. But psychedelics, because if you understand where we are mentally, you can see. I mean, disease is going up. Mental illness is on the rise in every category. And when discipline, like that lady in Tampa you're speaking about, discipline. That is it. That is the key to life, is discipline. And discipline is the first thing that the brain starts losing signals in that area of the brain. You just, once that's gone, forget about it. And there's so many environmental exposures and things happening to us between the blue lights, hormone imbalances, malnutrition, a sedentary lifestyle, lack of being outside in sunlight. When you get into that spot, the neurotransmitters and hormones are not functioning the way they are, and what is created is this lack of discipline. And so psychedelics, just floods the brain with these messengers to saying, wait, you can do this. You needed to be doing a better job. Self-awareness, self-understanding, and bringing you back to the responsibility that you have. And you really only have one responsibility, one thing you can control, and that's yourself. And so I studying psychedelics for 17 years now, and administering ketamine for almost 14. And that is, I've watched that alone, like people coming in to see me just for ketamine, not for lifestyle. And in 3 years, watching them change their lifestyle right in front of my face, just watching them improve on their own. Now, if they were to do all of it at one time, therein lies the opportunity, is change your mind, have all of the features or factors that you would need to get you to that spot you want to be at quicker. But you have to be able to be clear-minded and understand exactly what your responsibilities are and those goals you have. Because just as you're saying, someone can have a goal, but whether they ever get there is all discipline.
Yeah, that's great. So let's jump into the audience here. A lot of them are entrepreneurs traveling, doing different things. Do you have any kind of rules or guidelines or suggestions for people who are traveling a lot, and how do they stay sharp on the road if they're still, still leaning into sleep, activity, and nutrition?
Nothing changes. It's all
Mhm.
discipline. If
Yeah.
you want a certain result, especially if you're always traveling, I mean, you have to figure it out. That is your life. And remember, lifestyle is figuring out ways to modify the exterior environment to fit your goals. And so, you can exercise anywhere. You don't even have to leave your hotel room. Food is a choice. You don't have to stick anything in your mouth. Fasting works. You don't even need to eat as much as you once thought. The caloric intake that we thought we needed is far lower. So eating is not hard. Exercise is not hard. Discipline is hard. So you have to learn how to take sleep, diet, and exercise and take that with you everywhere, and be that person that says, hey, I got to get out of here. I got a routine. I got to be up in the morning.
Hmm.
Those are the people that you can look at. And I usually tell people that, I say, look around you and see and learn from the people that seem to be doing things right, and ask them what they're doing. And guy wrote a book. David Asprey wrote that book, Game Changers, where he interviewed 400 people in the health and wellness or successful people, and asked them what were they doing to get where they are, and wrote a book about it. And guess what? It's very similar to the things we're talking about here. It's what is the end goal, and how are you going to get there? So it is a lot more simple. And again, why we talk about ketamine is that sometimes you just need something to give you a little perspective, or shake your brain up a little bit and send signals to the areas that might not be communicating as well. And all of a sudden things become crystal clear. It's the same idea as nootropics or smart supplements. People want connections in their brain to fire better. And usually when they do, they start slowly manipulating their lifestyle or their regimen to get better results.
So that's a great segue. You talked about supplements. Are there some particular supplements that have the best risk benefit profile for most adults? And at what point should personalization begin, or is there stuff that you just go, you know what, these supplements everybody should have or take?
Yeah, I think B vitamins, methylated B vitamins, minerals. You hear a lot of people talking about Celtic salt. Celtic salt's an easy one. It has 90 minerals, 90 nutrients. Most of them are minerals. And so minerals, B vitamins, because our stress response, our body uses up B vitamins, and they're required in so many different
Hmm.
systems and chemical reactions. Fatty acids, healthy fats, getting omega-3 fatty acids. So that's kind of my corner is minerals, methylated B vitamins, and omega-3 fatty acids are really my three go to.
Interesting. That's cool. So I may or may not, Brent, put this into the podcast, but I'm going to just test it and see what everybody thinks. So just feel free to ramble on this. What are your thoughts on the new Maha movement, Make America Healthy Again, and what RFK Jr. is trying to do? I know you, knowing you, we have never talked about this, but knowing you, you're studying exactly what he's talking about, and you're probably following him very closely. So just wondered what your thoughts are on that whole movement.
Well, as you know, I don't ever watch TV, so I don't necessarily know
You
that.
read
I
like
know
a
what.
you read like a fiend, though. So
Yeah, I know enough to know that what he's doing is supportive of everything that I talk about. I mean, he actually, you look at, there's videos of him without his shirt on, where, I mean, he's, for his age, he looks very good. He's taking care of himself. He understands the problem with our foods. He understands the problem with a for-profit healthcare system. So
yeah,
again,
you've talked to me about that a lot, actually. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and more importantly is, us talking is so people can get this information without having to go do all the research, because we've already done it. And
Right.
and so if you wanted to do the research, it's all there. What RFK is saying is the data is all there. The research is there. You just have to go look it up. But you go back before the 70s and 80s. We didn't have pharmaceutical industry. People lived. People took care of themselves, and they treated disease the way they could.
Mhm.
And here we are now. There's a drug for everything. So
Yeah.
he's trying to get back to saying, let doctors practice, take away, allow insurance to start paying for disease prevention. a lot more transparency in this whole healthcare industry. But when people are getting on social media, which is now the new news, and basically saying, I would never go to a primary care doctor ever again, that's not good for the healthcare system. That's not good for anyone. It should be that these doctors are getting educated so that they can start actually providing the type of healthcare and disease prevention that people need and want. And that shift is what Robert Kennedy Jr. is going to change. He's making it very apparent that the foods are bad, the medicines being delivered bad, and it has to change. And we just have to see how quickly he can get it moving.
Interesting. Now you mentioned something about him exercising with his shirt. A lot of pictures of him with his shirt off and in jeans, which I can't ever figure out.
Yeah, I don't understand that either.
Don't understand that. But so it's
well, maybe they just took him off the road and said, "Hey, do some pull-ups."
But you at Priority MD, you combine aesthetic medicine with your care, and I want to understand what was the thought there. How do we avoid chasing surface fixes? How do you balance that out?
It's a tough one because by offering everything, because I when I talk about pillars of health, like you said, what do I tell people in lifestyle? Sleep, diet, exercise, hormone optimization, and micronutrients. Those are kind of my 5 pillars. But I have 2 other pillars, which is aesthetics and psychedelics or mindful medicine. Those I think are just as important in certain circumstances because we know, this again, we have to be confident and proud of who we are and the way we manage ourselves. And so a little vanity does go a long way. I mean, it sounds cliche, but it's true. And so if people are doing it for the right reasons, aesthetics is a very important part of the end product. The problem is when someone tries to shine up the car without taking care of the engine, and that happens, and it does happen. So we will get people to come in for aesthetics, but you can see that they're obviously not engaging in the lifestyle. Right. But what we hope is that the one says, "Oh, you do hormones and lifestyle medicine. I want to get an appointment." But most often it's our clients coming in for lifestyle that say, "Oh, you know what? I feel so great now. Can I see your aesthetics person and see what they say about this and this?" So I think the flow is usually right.
It's almost like you said about GLP-1s. It's like, okay, we're going to give you a little head start as long as, right? Like, first of all, it's moderation, because we've seen people take it to a degree that they don't even look like their old self. But also, it sort of ties in with how you do medicine, which is, I'm okay with giving you a little nudge or a little help to get going, but you got to take it from there, right? Like you got to do the things that are necessary. So,
oh yeah, and as you know, with science, especially with nutrition, is take care of the inside and the outside. You can beautify the outside while you're fixing the inside, and when you fix the inside, you're not going to need as much help on the outside. And so, that is definitely the message. But the aesthetics is a difficult one because just as you said, you don't want people fixing out like I said, you don't want people shining the nice car, but then leaving putting in a moped engine in a Ferrari.
That's right. Okay. So we're going to end with something we do here on Keep Shining. And that is, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. The first one is, so we talk about lighthouses. I think I mentioned that at the beginning. We want to make people be better versions of themselves so that they're being a light or being an example to other folks. Who in your life has been a major light in your life? Who are they and what did they teach you?
Wow. That's a tough one, but I would just say family in general, because my pursuit of answers was for my family. I already told you my parents' age and I, we grew up in Michigan and definitely not under, my parents were, shot out in a healthy lifestyle. They needed to have one developed for them. And so my motivation was, I have 2 kids. I felt it was my job to figure this all out because it was obviously broken. So I was on a quest and motivated completely to make sure that my family and the people around me definitely had the right answers and had the right path. Because as a physician, that is really what my duty was not to listen to how people told me to practice it, was to go out and find the truth and deliver it. And so I was very motivated to be an example, and also, pioneer in areas of medicine that were very limited in exposure, to see if there was something there, because science was sending me there. And sure enough, I've been able to take what I've learned and provide that to the people around me, and they're doing great, which makes me excited, and it's kept me motivated to continue to dive into this.
That's cool. Have there been any scientists, physicians, that you read on a regular basis? You go, wow, they really impress me.
Yeah, I love reading. Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I've read so much on, but they're all mostly doctors that were writing in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. I mean, that's where the interesting material is, because there was no one editing it. This is just them. There was no research. This was their research, their observational clinical trials that they were putting out there, and from nutrient to the people starting nutrient IVs, Myers, Dr. Myers. Everyone knows the Myers cocktail. Reading how these people got started into saying, hey, wait a minute, there's got to be a better way, or let's stick to the basics. And so all of the doctors in the past that pioneered functional or homeopathic or natural medicine have been mentors of mine, because that's where you get the real medical information.
It's funny you say that, because you're familiar with from the board, the scientific advisory board you were on, Dr. Kevin Smith, as a pioneer in ophthalmology in Canada. He said the same thing. Most of the reading that he does is from doctors in the 40s and 50s, even in ophthalmology.
Even
because
oh wow,
because he says they had ideas that hadn't been perfected, but they were pure ideas because they weren't impacted by insurance companies or even in Canada, where it's government, it's government healthcare. It's still there are things on it that make it less than objective, so it's
right?
interesting.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
that is, especially in eye medicine. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Just in cures and in just different things that can be done, and things that they hadn't perfected, but if it had been followed, he said, if we had followed it along, we would have found a cure quicker, but we
right.
abandoned it for medicine, right? As
Sunlight was
opposed
a
to,
big part of that.
exactly, that's one of the ones he talks about. Okay, so the second question is, this is how this works, is our last guest asks a question. They don't know who's going to receive the question, but you get it. You get their question. So this is the
All right.
question from the last guest, and it is, if you could go back in time to your younger self, where would you go back to? Like, what time? How old would you have been? What would you tell him, and why? I thought this was a good question. This was a,
Probably 30s, early
30s.
30s, and it would be psychedelic medicine.
Yeah.
It would be understanding the understanding plant based psychedelic medicine.
Yeah.
Basically which again, I am firm believer that everything that we need to heal is on this earth.
Yep.
So all of the plant-based medicine that was removed from our use, just like hormones for 20 years for women, media told them it was bad and they took it away. Well, plant-based medicine, especially in psychedelics, has been removed, and they were Schedule I drugs up until a couple years ago, some of them. But that is where that would be a complete change for where I am now, had I been exposed to that then.
And focused on it more, right?
Focused on it more, but I'm talking for personal use, in personal growth. Remember what I said is, you can't change anything without changing your mind. And there is a lot of people that would have made a lot less mistakes and probably stayed on a different path had they had that opportunity, and not what the opportunities we have in front of us.
It's funny. You said what you said there in your office about a year ago. Everything we need to heal us is already here. And for me, that was a faith thing. It was like, see, God built it all. He built it all along. It's all there.
Right.
He just wants us to go discover it, and not
Or
outlaw it once we find it.
yes, right. It's already discovered. We just have to go find it. and find and believe in it. Back to the basics. That's really what it is, or moderation, like you said.
So, last thing, you get to leave a question for our next guest. So, what is your question that you're going to ask for the next guest who comes on? And I can't tell you who it is.
All right, I'll kind of use they go back in the future. I will say, what do they think is the number one most important thing that if they could do it right now, knowing it, that would impact our future the most? What's the number one thing that you could change right
today,
now that you know that today that you know that you think that would impact the path of our future the most?
All right, that's a great question.
From a health perspective.
Yeah. Well, or anything potentially, I guess.
Yeah, or anything. Yeah, you can just leave it wide open. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, Brent, thanks for being on with us. Appreciate you jumping on and being one of the early ones.
Keep shining.